Hello, and welcome to another Kotlin tutorial. This week we'll be taking you through writing a Kotlin app that is connected to a Firebase database, specifically this week, writing to the database. Now this will be a continuation of the read tutorial that was released last week, so we will be expanding on it by writing functions that write to Firebase, a new page that allows a user to enter data and see that data reflected in the rest of the app. So without further ado, let's get into the code. Okay, so what we're going to be doing first is that we're going to be taking the code that we wrote in our last tutorial, which was the Firebase read, and we're going to tweak it so that we can get it so that it can write to the database as well. So the first thing we're going to do that is we are going to update any of our UI that needs updating. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go onto our main layout, and we're going to add a button that when pressed will take you to a new UI page. So it's very simple, just add the button tag, add the ID, I'm going to call it add cake. I'm also going to set the width and height to be wrap content. As well as setting the margin to be 20 dp, and then set our constraints to the bottom and the end of the page to be the parent. So constrain bottom to the bottom of parent, and end to end of parent. And all we're going to do is then set the text of the button. So we're going to do text equals, and we're just going to hard code the text to say add cake. Okay, as you can see, we've now got a compiler warning over the hard coded text, and to fix that it's just going to be a case of suppress the warning because it's hard coded text. Okay, so now we've done the UI, we're going to make tweaks to the actual code itself. So first, I think it makes sense to actually tweak the cake object. So this is going to need a few changes in order to make it so that we can create an empty cake object and then populate it with data that can then be uploaded to Firebase. So the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to take this code that's currently in the init, cut it, and actually put it in its own function. So we're going to create a private function, so private fun, I'm going to call it create cake from snapshot. We're going to pass in a snapshot, that's a type data snapshot, and we're just going to paste our code in there. Okay. Then what we're going to do is that we're going to then create a new function called toMap. Now what toMap is going to do is that it's going to return a hash map of type string any, and this is what gets uploaded to Firebase. So we're going to first create a variable called map, which is of type hash map string any, string any, and we're going to initialize it like that. Okay, then we need to populate the map, so we're going to do map, we're going to create a key called name, I'm going to make it equal name, and then we're going to copy and paste that, just save us a bit of time, replace it with our other data. So we've got date baked, and expiry date. And one thing you do need to make sure in here is that the keys are the same as what they're going to be in as what you are reading. Otherwise, if they're not, then your app won't be able to read them. So now we've populated our map, all we're going to have to do now is just return it. So just do return map. Okay. Now, last thing we got to do is make it so that our class, the data snapshot, is optional. The reason why we want to do this is because if we want to create a blank cake object that doesn't contain any data that we then populate later, if we haven't got set this data, the snapshot as optional, then you would always have to pass in the data snapshot, which we don't want to do. So pass it in as an optional, and then inside the init, we then do an if check, say if snapshot is not equal to null. We will then call the function creates cake from snapshot, passing in snapshot. And let's just get rid of this unused import. With that is now our cake object done. Okay, the next file that we want to make a change to is the cake model class, or sorry, object. So this one is a very simple one to change. All we have to do is just add one function to it, and that is a save cake function. So at the bottom we're going to write our function, so fun save cake, and it requires a few things to be passed in. So it requires a cake object to be passed in, as well as a non-complete listener, and it's going to be void, and it will be an optional, so you don't have to pass it in, but there is one there if you do pass one in. Okay, so what a non-complete listener is that it is a piece of code that you want to be run when this function has finished. So because this function gets run asynchronously, if you want anything to be ran after it's finished, then you would put it in the onComplete. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our reference, so val reference will equal get database ref dot push. Now we're calling it .push because we want to create a new entry in the database. What push does is it will give it will basically give this entry an auto-generated ID. If we don't do this, it will actually insert into the root of cakes, and if you do that, then we won't be able to read it. And what's worse, it'll actually cause basically the entire that section of the database to not be readable anymore, because we will pollute the database. So now we've got the reference. All we need to now do is call reference dot update children, passing in our cake object and calling to map dot add onComplete listener. And we want to, and this is going to be a lambda function, so task left arrow, and we're going to do if task dot is complete, we're going to do onComplete listener dot on complete, passing in task, and then we're going to just call set changed and notify observers. This way, anything that is currently listening to our cake model, or is an observer of our cake model, will then know to run their update function. And okay, so that's the only bit we have to do on the cake model page. So the only bit that's left to do, tweak-wise, is to make a tweak to our main activity. It's very simple. All we got to do, all we have to do is just add an on-click listener to the button that we created when we tweaked the UI. So it's very simple. All we got to do is call add cake dot set on-click listener. Okay. And inside that, we want to pass in a function that we're about to write called add cake. So then underneath, let's just add that now. So all it is just a private function called add cake. Doesn't need anything passed into it. All we're going to do is create a read-only variable called intent, which will equal intent. I'm going to pass in this as well as an activity that we're going to be writing soon. So we're going to write add cake activity class dot Java. And then all we've got to do is just call start activity, passing in intent. Okay. And that, I believe, is everything that we need to do in order to get this page to work. So as you can see, there is a compiler error on this. This add cake activity is causing a compiler error, but that's because we haven't actually created this class yet. So we're actually going to do that now, just to get it out of the way. So we want to go into our Java, inside our package, and just right click it, create new Kotlin class, and it's just going to be called add cake activity. Add cake activity. Okay. Just double check that has been added to the manifest. It hasn't, so we're going to go to the add activity, and we're going to make it extend the app compat activity. Okay, as you can see, it's now got a compiler warning, which is telling us that it's not been registered to the manifest. So to fix that, just click on the light bulb and add the activity to the manifest. We go back to the main activity. You can now see that we've no longer got a compiler error. Okay, so that is all the tweaks that we need to do to the current code. What we're next going to be doing is writing some new code that will be able to let us write to Firebase. Okay, so now that we have made the tweaks, what we're going to do now is that we're going to create the UI for the add cake page. So we're going to go into our res directory inside layouts. I'm going to go new, layout resource file. This is just going to be called the add cake layout. Click OK. Go into the text view, and what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple edit texts. So we're going to have edit text, and the width is going to be 0 dp because we're going to want it to match its constraints, and the height is going to be wrap content. We're also going to set its ID to ID add cake name. Now I'm also going to set the text size to 14 SP, and we're going to give it a hint to be name. Now what we've got to do is just set the constraints as well as a bit of a margin. So we're going to set the start and end to parent, as well as the top to the top of parent. Okay. As you see, we have a compiler warning here, and it's because again it's a hard-coded string, so we're just going to do the same thing we did last time, which is to suppress the warning. And the only other thing we're going to do is just add a bit of margin to the top. So margin top is going to be 12 dp, just to give us a bit of space. Okay. Now to save us a bit of time, we're just going to copy and paste this. I'm going to create two more for our. So our first one is going to be for the date baked, and then the last one is going to be for expiry date. Okay. As you can see, these now have compiler warnings as well, but this is to do with Android assuming what we want to actually put into the edit text. So because we've typed the word date, it thinks that we're actually going to want to put a date in there. So but in this example we don't want to do that. We instead want to just keep it as plain text. So what we're going to do is we're going to suppress the warning on both of them. So just do the same thing, and then that'll fix those compiler warnings. Now, in general, you would when you're selecting the date, you would have a calendar selector normally, and then that would then give you a Unix timestamp, which is then what you would then store in the database. But for this example, we're just going to keep it simple and have it as hard-coded strings. So all we now have to do is just fix the constraints. So we're going to, instead of constraining the top to the top of the parent, we want to constrain the top to bottom of whatever is above it. So our expiry date, we're going to want it to do it on the date baked. So date baked, and we're just going to copy that, paste it over, and not for date baked, it's going to be for expiry date. Right. No, we're not expiry date, we want it for name. Okay, and all we've got to do is then just change the hint. So that one is going to be date baked and expiry date. And all we've got to do now is just add a button. So add a button, set its width to be 0 dp, so we have it match its constraints, and the height to be wrap content. Set its ID to be add cake save. And then we want to set its constraints. So we want to set the start, bottom, and end constraints to parent. So the start, end to the end of parent, start to the start of parent, and then to anchor it to the bottom of the page, we're just going to set the bottom. Constrain bottom to the bottom of parent. Okay. Now, all we've got to do is just give it a bit of space, so we're going to set the margin to be 12 dp, and then just give it some text so that the user knows what to do with that button. So we're going to set the text to be save, and we're just going to ignore this warning because it's a hard code warning, just like that. And then that is it. That's now our add cake layout done. Okay, so now we've written the UI for the add cake activity. We now need to actually write the code for the add cake activity itself. Okay, So all we're going to write is, so first we need to create an onCreate function. So override fun onCreate. And we need to set the content view to the layout we've just created. So r.layout.addCakeLayout. Okay. We then need to get a get a reference to the cake model. So cake model, just get an instance of that. And then all we got to do is just do add cake save. So getting a reference to our button, and then adding the onClick listener to it. Okay, and we're going to pass in a function called save cake. Now we're just going, all we need to now do is just write the save cake function. So it's just going to be a private function, save cake. And in here, first we're going to need to do a bit of logic to make sure that the data we've typed in is valid. And then once we've done that, we are then going to create a new cake object, fill it with the data we typed in, and then we're going to save that to Firebase. So, okay, so first we're going to do if add cake name dot text. So we're getting the text from whatever we typed in is equal to null, or add cake name dot text dot length is less than or equal to 0. We're going to then toast and pass in a string telling the user what they need to do. So it's going to be please add name. Now, as you can see, this bit of code here has a squiggly underline, and that's because it's actually the editor giving us a suggestion on what would actually be better. So as you can see, it's saying replace size 0 check with is empty. So we will do that. Okay. Then after we've done that, we're just going to call return. So that way the rest of the function is not run. Next we're going to do the exact same thing for all the other values we've typed in. So just copy and paste it to save a bit of time, and just change the names. So add cake date baked, and add cake expiry date. Making sure you also change what it was written in the toast. So please add date baked, and please add cake add expiry date. Okay, so if we get through all of those if statements without any problems, we then want to create a new cake object with what we've typed in. So we're going to create a read-only variable called cake, which is going to be equal to a cake object, and we're going to actually pass in null into it. So we're not passing in a snapshot, so this will create a blank cake object. Afterwards, we then want to set the data for it. So cake.name will be equal to add cake name.text .toString. Make sure it is a string that we typed in. And we're going to do the same thing for the other two values. So again, just copy and paste. So add cake date baked and add cake expiry date. Making sure we also do the change over here. So date baked and expiry date. Now the last thing we've got to do is do cake model dot save cake. I'm going to pass in the cake we've just created, so cake, and we're also going to pass in an on-complete listener. So on complete listener, and inside the lambda we're going to pass in, we're going to type task and some arrows, new line, and I'm going to say if task dot is complete, then we're going to do finish. Okay, so what this does is that it will, when this function has completed, then it will finish. So that way, basically what that means is that when the cake has been finished uploading to Firebase, then it will actually navigate away from the page. But with that, that's the entire app now written. Okay, so the last thing that you'll need to do, if you followed on from the last video, is that you need to go into your Firebase database, go into your rules, and all you need to do is make sure you set the write to true. So what it would have said originally is auth not equal to null. Now, in general, you want to make sure that is actually the case, but because of the way that we've written it here, we're not setting up an auth system, so all you need to do is write true, because if you don't, then your app won't actually be able to write to Firebase. It will just be logcat that the request was denied, that you don't have auth access. So now with the app written, we are going to take a look at it running. Okay, so here we have the app running on a device. As you can see, we still have all the same data as what we did when we did the Firebase Rules tutorial, except now we have a button that says add cake. So if we click on that, we've now got the add cake page. So we're going to type in a name. So we're going to go for let's go for a caterpillar cake. So caterpillar cake. It was baked on the 9th of April. And it will expire on the 11th of April. Okay, so now if we click save, you can see there it is right there. And there you go. We have created a Kotlin app that is able to read and write data from a Firebase database. All of the code that has been written here will be available on GitHub. The link will be available in the description below. Please remember to like this video, comment on what you would like me to build in Kotlin next, and to subscribe to the Apps in the Sky YouTube channel for more quality app tutorials. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next time.